Alright everybody, we're working on a Ram 3500 here. What initially happened is the U-joints in the axle they took a shit on us. They fell apart and that took out the wheel bearing. So in order to get this back, we had to get a new wheel bearing. We put in the new wheel bearing. I'll explain a little bit about how to do that here in a second, but one thing you want to keep in mind is if that happens to you, you can't put the wheel bearing in without the axle shaft, okay? But you can use the half shaft here. So we use the half shaft. You can see how it's all ate up from being slopped around after it lost the U-joint. You can use this half here in the bearing and then make sure your axle nut is on in the hub here. If you don't do that, your wheel bearing will fall apart within about 20 or 30 miles. So that's a good way to get it home. That's what we did. And now we're going to go ahead and get the new axle shaft in. But to actually pull the axle or to install the axle, you don't have to take off your rotor and all that other stuff. What you can actually do, just pull the two main bolts for your caliper cradle. You want to pull those off. Those are 18s. Disconnect your tie rod in. That's like a 13/16 or something, whatever that equates to. It's a metric. Smack with a hammer a couple times, it drops down. Then in the back here, you want to pull your four 18mm wheel bearing bolts. And as long as your wheel bearing isn't seized, you can drop, as you can see, the hub, the bearing, the rotor, everything down in one piece. That'll allow you to slide your axle in, and then you just reverse the process. So that's that. Just a quick tip. You don't have to take your ball joints down. You don't have to take your rotor off, especially on the dually. You've got your dually adapter here on the front even. You don't have to take that off. You don't have to take your rotor off. Just pull your four bolts for your wheel bearing assembly and make sure your speed sensor, it doesn't even have to be unplugged, it just needs to be taken off the little clips for the brake line there. And that'll give you enough room to go ahead and drop it down to the ground, slap your axle back in, and then from there it's just 6 bolts, 1 nut, and you're back on the road. But like I said, if you ever do have to limp it home and you have a bad axle shaft, you do not run it without the axle shaft or your wheel bearing will come apart. At very least you want to have the half shaft in, the wheel bearing assembly with the hub nut on, because that kind of squeezes the wheel bearing together and it keeps the wheel bearing together. If you don't have that there, your wheel bearing will come apart while you're going down the road.